Bloodbath is a legendary extreme demon that came out way back in 1.9 and was one of the first truly difficult levels in Geometry Dash that gave pro players at the time a run for their money. It pushed the boundaries of difficulty at that time in a landscape where extremely hard levels are looked upon negatively. From my memory, it was also one of the first popular megacollabs in Geometry Dash, featuring historical creator legends such as G-Boy, Michigan, and Edza. This gives me the opportunity to rank each individual part and see how good they are and how well they age almost a decade later. Unlike the previous video ranking Artificial Ascent, I'll also take into account the gameplay of each section, since I do have experience playing the level, although I quit a long time ago since I got sick of the level. The rankings will be based on decorations and detailing, the gameplay, and how well I think it aged in 2025. All of them will be out of 10, so yeah, let's get into it. The first part is a decent introduction to the level and tells the player what to expect throughout the whole level, which is tight, straight flying ship and high CPS gameplay, especially for 1.9 standards. Visually, it's really nothing special, it's just generic 1.9 design that doesn't really stand out among the rest. Gameplay wise, it is a challenge immediately without giving the player any time to breathe. Just straight into the action, which means in my experience, I will find myself wasting a couple of attempts at the very first ship section. So there's some frustration there, but since this is the very beginning, it is not so bad. The spam ball section at the end of the part is inconsistent at best for me, but again, due to the whole part being at the very beginning, these flaws don't really mean much. So the decoration and detailing, I'll say it's a 7 out of 10. The gameplay is 6 out of 10, mostly because I keep dying there. And how well it aged, 6 out of 10. It's just average. The next part is made by Vermilion, and it contains the slow music sync ball section, which is one of the more iconic parts in the entire level. I really like how it looks. It's simple, but it gets the job done. The input syncing to the music really makes it very satisfying to play, similar to the section before the ball, which is the ship. Most of the ship sections in Bloodbath require straight flying, but this ship section in particular is unique in that it requires the player to fly up and down and understand how momentum works, which is a nice change of pace since it really flows well in my opinion. However, visually the ship section is really nothing too special even for its time, so I can't give the whole part a high score for that despite the iconic ball section. So the decoration will end up being 7.5 out of 10. The gameplay, solid, 8 out of 10, and I think it aged pretty well, so 8 out of 10. In true Michigan fashion, his part resembles his iconic temple levels, and I think it's visually very pleasing since it doesn't have a lot of red flashing into your eyes, since it's at the part of the song where it's much more chill. However, that does not make the gameplay chill though. It contains very hard timings compared to the other parts, especially in the UFO in my opinion. The UFO section, for whatever reason, is so much harder than the rest of the section, like the ball or the ship. I really don't like it. Michigan's section as a whole is such choke point since whenever I get through it, I do have a fighting chance to make it very far into the level, but most of my attempts are spent dying to the UFO section. But yeah, I mean overall it's one of the best parts visually, but it is one of the hardest parts in the level in my opinion. So the decoration and detailing is 8 out of 10, solid. The gameplay, the UFO section alone, brings it down to a 6 out of 10, and for that, it aged 6 out of 10. It could have been better if not for that UFO section. Compared to Michigan's part before this, Evasium's part is more of a respite where you can gather your wits to prepare for the second half of the level, and I appreciate it for that. But this part's main thing for me is the unique color palette. Since Bloodbath is a hell level, every part will be expected to use intense red colors and black most of the time. But this part uses grey as its main color, with the red taking a back seat as more of a tertiary color, which is a nice contrast and makes the part stand out from the rest. The only thing though holding this part back from being the best part visually is its relatively simple block design, since all of the structures are only one singular block, which doesn't really leave much to be decorated. So for the decoration, for that is 7.5. The gameplay, again, 8 out of 10. It's just solid, it's easy, but it's also not like boring. And how it aged, 7.5. Overall, just a solid part. Oh boy, we're back into the thick of it with Crack's part. Now, some people might expect me to not like the one-dimensional feel, since it only contains straight flying ship gameplay, but I do think that's the point of the section. The music is back to being intense, and the whole bread and butter of Bloodbath is its type ship sections, and having it be mainly straight flying is actually unique at the time, since you don't really have much straight flying besides maybe Cataclysm or Ice Common Diablo X containing some straight flying sections. Of course, in 2025, this part is very doable, but back in the day, this is like considered the hardest part of the level by some. Visually, it looks very good since it has a nice balance of foreground and background decoration, and the structures have enough depth to prevent it from being too repetitive, since it's mostly just straight flying structures. So the decoration is 7 out of 10. The gameplay, I really love the straight flying, 8.5 out of 10. And how it aged, 8 out of 10, aged like fine wine. I'd argue that this part has to be one of the most forgettable sections in the level, and I can't really pinpoint it to one specific thing. I think it's just a combination of the part looking very lazy and the gameplay being mediocre, I suppose. There's a whole lot of copy-pasted sauce spammed throughout the UFO section, and the structures that do exist are pretty basic compared to the part before, which is Crack's part. There's also weird usage of 3D plots in the ball section, which I think is quite funny, just imagining a creator not understanding how to use the 3D objects. The gameplay is just unremarkable since it doesn't really challenge the player. You'll get through it like 95% of the time, and especially it being beside Crack's part, which is intense straight flying. This part is just like, it's not as intense as Crack's part. So the decoration, 5 out of 10, the gameplay is 6 out of 10, and how it aged, 4 out of 10. I would replace this part immediately if I were to remake Bloodbath. After a long auto section, we get to Edza's part, which is another iconic section of the level due to its unique angular corridors and unconventional and awkward pathing for the ship in the already weird and quirky corridors. In my opinion, this part is tied with Michigan for being the hardest part of the level, even today. I really like the menacing red glow in the corridor section, which, mind you, this is before color blending is added to the game, which would make the glow in the corridor much smoother and more pleasing on the eyes. My only gripe with this section is that I wish Edza would have used more shades of red, and also added more details to the huge amounts of black blocks that block off most of the screen, which would make this section feel more whole and not empty in the corridor section. So the decoration is 7 out of 10. The gameplay, 8 out of 10. It's really hard, but it's solid. How it aged, 7 out of 10. It's just a really good section. This part is also tied with A-Sonic for being a forgettable part of the level, since to be honest it doesn't really add much in terms of visuals and gameplay. I mean, the ball section is just Vermilion's ball section, but with slight changes here and there, so I mean that definitely deducts points for decoration. It's just shameless. The gameplay is quite generic, but at least it's much more fun than A-Sonic's gameplay, but it's not really saying that much. So I mean, overall it is just a filler part between Edza and the end of the level. So the decoration and detailing 6 out of 10, the gameplay 7 out of 10, and how it aged 5 out of 10. Very average. Giron or Giron, I don't know how you pronounce it, but I mean his part is very low key visually, but in a good way for me, since it is a nice break from the intense red everywhere in the level. It has that menacing and scary feel to it, since the structure has a lot of black glow and the blackened brick blocks, which does fit with the gameplay as well, because the gameplay contains a pretty tough ship section with very awkward gaps, and you are dealing with jump orbs and gravity portal combos, which isn't really seen anywhere else in the level. So that change of pace is, I mean, it can be a little bit tricky. It's not the best part by any means, but it is a solid part that adds a lot to the menacing factor of Bloodbath. So the decoration is 7.5 out of 10, gameplay is 8 out of 10, very solid. It's very satisfying, but it's pretty difficult. And 7.5 out of 10 for how it aged. G-Boy's part has no business being quite difficult, especially for being right at the end, since it's such a subversion of expectations. You've been conditioned with high-speed gameplay throughout like 80% of the level, and suddenly G-Boy just switches up on you at the very end. It has decently tight timings, which are made even worse if you factor in your nerves at this point of the level, which, I mean, I think it's a fitting end to the level, believe it or not. Visually though, it's just bland, with the blinding red used for almost everything on the screen, though I would say it has a pretty cool text saying "your blood," which is funny and edgy, and I really love the font style, so there's an added point to the decoration. So decoration ends up being 7 out of 10. The gameplay 7.5 out of 10. I wish it's a little bit nerfed. And how it aged 7 out of 10. It is another iconic part of the level. And that's all of the sections in Bloodbath. Keep in mind that these are my opinions and my experiences with the level, and it may differ from others. Like many 1.9 levels, Bloodbath has already showed its age with certain parts such as A-Sonic and Havoc's. But that doesn't mean that the level doesn't contain solid parts that age decently well for today's standards. The main objective of this level is to push the boundaries of difficulty, and not to look pretty. So I can accept the level being lackluster in certain sections. But that's about it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.